Hello, and welcome to the Daily Rings of Power podcast, your not-so-daily dose of the latest news, rumours, and speculation about the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. The day is Monday, August 26th, and I'm your host, Harry. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. We're back today with a nice, short little episode, or at least shorter than usual. We're hot on the heels of another one of our mega episodes that was released on Saturday, and if you haven't already, make sure you listen to that episode where I was joined by Sarah Westvick for a deep dive on the Siege of Eregion. Today's mini-sode, or perhaps I should just say normal length episode, is a very rough and ready reaction to the Season 2 soundtrack album, which was released at the end of last week. This will be a similar episode to the two-parter I did for the Season 1 album, in that it won't be a detailed analysis of the individual tracks and all the musical nuances contained within. That is simply because I do not have the musical education or expertise to provide a knowledgeable analysis of the musical theory and composition involved. Trust me, there are much more experienced voices you can find in the Tolkien community for proper music analysis. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoy my enthusiastic, if a little uninformed, reaction to the wonderful new album from Bear McCreary. However, even on a short episode like this, we cannot start without a reading from the Professor's work. Today's reading comes from The Lord of the Rings, Book 2, Many Meetings. They got up and withdrew quietly into the shadows and made for the doors. Sam they left behind, fast asleep still with a smile on his face. In spite of his delight in Bilbo's company, Frodo felt a tug of regret as they passed out of the Hall of Fire. Even as they stepped over the threshold, a single clear voice rose in song. Aelbereth Gilthoniel, Silivren Penamiriel, O menel aglar elenath, Nakaere palandiriel, O galathremin enorath, Fanwilos lelinathon, Nephayarsi nephayaron. Frodo halted for a moment, looking back. Elrond was in his chair, and the fire was on his face like summer light upon the trees. Near him sat the Lady Arwen. To his surprise, Frodo saw that Aragorn stood beside her. His dark cloak was thrown back, and he seemed to be clad in elven mail, and a star shone on his breast. They spoke together, and then suddenly it seemed to Frodo that Arwen turned towards him, and the light of her eyes fell on him from afar, and pierced his heart. He stood still enchanted, while the sweet syllables of the elvish song fell like clear jewels of blended word and melody. "It is a song to Elbereth," said Bilbo. "They will sing that, and other songs of the Blessed Realm, many times tonight. Come on." I know, listeners, I know. It was particularly cruel of me to make you endure 30 seconds of my tone-deaf singing, which even with some added reverb I am afraid cannot be saved. However, I thought that in the spirit of reaction to an album of music, whilst also attempting to make this short episode entertaining for all of you, a bit of embarrassment on my behalf was a small price to pay. Plus, now that you've heard my amateurish singing, when we get to Benjamin Daniels singing Golden Leaves, you'll appreciate his beautiful voice even more. Now, one more note before we get into my reactions to each of these tracks. Those of you who were around to listen to my Season 1 soundtrack reactions may be expecting me to try and predict where each track falls this season, in what episode or what particular scene. Unfortunately, as I've already seen the first two episodes at the premiere, I don't want to risk revealing which of these songs may or may not appear in those episodes. So do forgive me if at times I am a little vague with my thoughts. It's all to protect you for these final 3 days. With all that out the way, let's dive into my reactions to the Season 2 soundtrack. Track number 1, Old Tom Bombadil, featuring Rufus Wainwright. Luckily, I don't need to spend too much time on this track, as this was one of those released prior to the full album release. So I think we've all come to accept the truth that this is an instant classic. I know that I, being an avowed Bombadil hater, should not be praising this song, but honestly, with Rufus Wainwright's glorious voice, how could I do anything but love it? Perhaps it's because it's the opposite of Tom's whimsy and nonsense, but this for me is a song that I must have already listened to a dozen times on repeat. I fully expect this to be a song that appears over the credits to whichever episode Tom first appears in, and frankly, this will certainly be one episode where I will sit through every second of those credits just to enjoy Wainwright's enchanting voice once more. Moving on to track 2, Rhûn, featuring The Mystery of the Bulgarian Voices. Now this one was a real treat. I didn't know what to expect, but Bear has once again created a location theme that immediately places you in a distinct geography and culture when we compare it with the music for the elves or Numenor. The chanting voices from the Bulgarian choir reminded me somewhat of the wonderful music from Prime Video's Wheel of Time series, whilst the instrumentation reminded me more directly of Bear's intense compositions from Black Sails. As always, my usual plug, go and watch Black Sails. But anyway, the combination of building drums and the gadulka add a level of tension and intensity I really don't think we've seen in many of the tracks outside of Sauron's own theme, and much like Numenor's theme, it's one that continues to build in intensity throughout the track. The rolling drum beat in the background, to me, has almost the quality of a military tattoo, which I think may suggest the martial future of Rhûn as part of the armies of Sauron. At the same time, the call and response element of the vocals seems to almost gel perfectly with the idea of magic cults that we expect we'll be seeing in Rhûn. However, the highest praise I can offer this track is that it sounds like a Eurovision entry, and I mean that in the best possible way. 12 points to Rhûn. Following that, we have track 3, Concerning Stoors. Now, this one was interesting to me because I feel like when the album titles were released, this was called Life in the Canyon, so maybe they decided at the last minute to change the track name, or maybe it was a placeholder name. Either way, Concerning Stoors is what we have. Now, unsurprisingly, this track seems like it shares some musical elements with the Harfoots in terms of the percussion and the woodwind, yet at the same time, I do think it's clearly distinct from their Western kindred. The track begins with a tune that, I don't know, it just makes you feel incredibly cheerful, and it has an optimistic tone. It's followed by that series of repeated string progressions, which, for me, continue to lift the mood as we go. However, I do think there's somewhat of a shift in tone from around the 2-minute 15 mark, which shifts the song into a more relaxed, quieter tone before it evolves again after 2 minutes 30. The only way I can describe that last section, and again this is without any musical knowledge, is that it feels like it's full of longing, as the percussion largely disappears, and whilst the tune is still light and bright, there's a different quality to it. It's the sound of a setting sun, and the sound of dreams of a faraway home. I mean, I could be way off here, but it sounds quite fitting for these proto-hobbits, if you ask me. Moving on to what I can reveal is my favourite track on the album, track 4, Golden Leaves, featuring Benjamin Walker. I mean, what can I even say about this track? It is gorgeous, and yes, once again, it is gorgeous. Ben's voice is so soothing that not only does it feel like a lament, it's almost a lullaby for the elven people and their departure from Middle-earth. Beyond just the elven people itself, though, what we know of the lyrics from community members' attempts at transcription is that it should really be considered a song of mourning for the land and for nature, as much as it is a lament for the Eldalier. Of course, many people from the lyrics we do have already drawn comparisons with Galadriel's song from the Fellowship of the Ring, and I expect that as the show continues, Bear will continue to draw upon these different songs in The Lord of the Rings, which he can repurpose for the show. I have to say though, my favourite moment of Golden Leaves, and it gives me chills every time I listen to it, is at 2 minutes 22, when the music starts to swell in the background, and then the way Ben holds that last note up until 2 minutes 40, it's mesmerising. The background accompaniment provides something akin to the tolling of church bells when we reach the end of the song. And I like that because, to me, it almost signifies what Gil-galad fears is the final death knell for the elves. Either way, what a fantastic song, and my hat goes off to Benjamin Walker. Please let us have more Gil-galad singing in future. Next up, track 5, Círdan's Perfection. O Círdan, his heart longs for Valinor, and in so many ways, so too does this song. There's so many layers to this track, from the introduction of the Elrond theme at 25 seconds, followed by the entrance of the full Valinor theme at 1 minute and 14 seconds. It's further enhanced by the use of the music from the Forging of the Three Rings, which we first heard in last season's finale. And then, as we hit 2 minutes 45, the music starts to soar. It's reminiscent to me of when we saw the two trees for the first time in the Season 1 prologue. It's almost as if Círdan's vision of Valinor can be realised in Middle-earth through the Three Rings. The two other absolutely spine-tingling moments for me in this track, the majestic explosion of the brass section at 3 minutes 19, and then at 4:57, when we get the most beautiful angelic vocals I honestly think we've heard in any track so far. The ending of the song, now this is a wonderful enigma as well, with the reintroduction of Where the Shadows Lie and the male vocalists providing an unsettling yet magisterial finale to this 6-minute masterpiece. It'll be very interesting to see how this is used in the show, but I am sure that given all these different elements, we know that it's going to be a pretty pivotal scene involving Círdan, Elrond, the rings, and a certain undertone of disquiet about what may be happening. After that, we get track 6, Stone Singers, featuring Sophia Nomvetti. Now this is a very short track, so there's only so much you can glean from the voice of Sophia and her fellow singers. It seems like the opening section is a glorious blend of the three singers harmonising, with their voices echoing as they grow in volume and intensity. The only way I can describe it is that the singing becomes almost uncomfortable as the song progresses, as Sophia's voice appears to overwhelm her compatriots, which is only exaggerated at the 51 second mark, with a huge intake of breath before that powerful final note completely eclipses the other singers. I think our biggest clue in this track, if you're familiar with what Sophia has been saying in interviews about Disa's loss of her connection to the mountain, is that the end of her singing, to me, it ends in what sounds like a cry of pain and anguish. What to make of that? I guess we'll have to wait until we see the episodes. Up next, track 7, Sandstorm at the Well. Now this is a whirlwind of a track, and yes, listeners, that pun was very much intended, but it's a really interesting track. It opens with the Stranger's theme, but it's played in an almost mellow and sorrowful tone before the Harfoot music enters around 40 seconds. Although, despite their usual upbeat presence, there is still an unsettling accompaniment in the background, with some somber notes played on the strings. Then, the track shifts gears entirely after the 1 minute 5 mark, as danger emerges with the string section, and we fly straight back into the militaristic Rhûn theme. In response, the Wise One theme returns around the 1 minute 48 mark, and this time, it's back to its triumphant roots from episode 8, only to be faced with a rising danger level represented by the drums and the brass section as the springs spiral downwards. As we approach the end of the song, chanting choral singers enter around the 2 minute 54 mark, which sounds like it climbs 3 times in a row, each time reaching new heights and overpowering everything else on the track. But, as if not to be outshone, the Wise One theme comes back at 3 minutes 24, and this time, I mean, when I listen to this, it's almost terrifying in its intensity. Is this going to be about the stranger unleashing a new form of his power, or losing control in some way? I mean, I think we can all agree, this is not just a visual sandstorm, but a sonic accompaniment that will have us blown away in our seats. Track 8, Eregion. Never has Eregion sounded more peaceful and more beautiful, and frankly, I think it is very cruel to do this to us before the inevitable turn to disaster. The children's choir that Bear's used here really lend a sense of innocence that I don't think we've even seen anywhere in the show. Even when you compare it to the Valinor theme, that has, I would describe, a more ethereal and otherworldly tone. The strings that come in after the 1:05 mark, they're still beautiful, but there is almost an undercurrent of sadness in there amidst the beauty. A sense of forlorn longing is the best way I can describe it. It reminded me, and I don't know why it did, but it reminded me of some of the music used during the last episodes of Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. For those who are Doctor Who fans and know what I'm talking about, just go back and watch the scene following Capaldi's beautiful line where he says, "Pity, I thought there'd be more stars." Anyway, back to Eregion. The choir at 2 minutes 30, there's a shift, and it almost sounds hopeful in tone, as if they're singing to a better future that is possible, and speaking to Celebrimbor's vision of making Middle-earth as beautiful as Valinor. Alas, if only that future were possible. Let us move quickly on before I get upset. And staying in Eregion, we get track number 9, Emissary at the Forge. Oh dear, I think we all know what this track is going to give us, and all the danger we are collectively in. The opening 30 seconds is almost understated, with just the strings building into that gentle choir music that rises as the rest of the accompaniment comes in. But after the 1 minute mark, it begins to transcend into something far more beautiful and far more imposing, with those powerful male vocals appearing around 1 minute 27. After that, the song shifts around the 2 minute mark and starts to build into something new, but it's almost like it's never allowed to break out with those unsettling chimes in the background. And then I think we can almost split the song in half, as if you look after the 3 minute 7 mark, it's where the darkness really starts to creep in, as we head straight into the Rings theme, followed immediately by Sauron's choral accompaniment. The track continues to build from there, with those frenetic strings, until by 3 minute 50, we really are just listening to Sauron's original theme in full. But there are also other elements in there, and I could be imagining this, but parts of it to me remind me of the Water and Flame track from episode 6, and then we switch back to Where the Shadows Lie at 4 minutes 18, but this time, Where the Shadows Lie, there are these horribly imposing horns in the background. I mean, to me, the last 2 minutes of this track, they're almost horrifying to me, with the haunting choral music and then the strings that turn somewhat sour at 5 minutes 55. It leaves a very unsettling final 30 seconds for the listener. Emissary at the Forge or Agent of Evil? Who am I to accuse Anatar of such things? On to track 10, Shelob. Yeah, listen, guys, I can't review this track properly. I've only listened to it twice. I'm sorry, listeners, but it's just pure effing nightmare fuel for me in those 15 seconds. I'm not lying to you when I say I genuinely hate it, and I just want to make it stop. It almost makes me feel like something is crawling in my ears in those first 30 seconds. It's just, the blaring horns warning of danger of our eight-legged friend, and again, for me, it just becomes very uncomfortable to listen to. I'm not even exaggerating when I say the 55-second mark, it becomes unbearable. To be clear, I do mean all of this in the highest of compliments to Bear. This is a fantastic song for a horrifying creature. There is a small bit of relief in there at the 1 minute 30 mark when it almost sounds like the Numenor cavalry theme from episode 6 surges forward to fight at the end. I mean, best of luck to you, Isildur, because frankly, I would just drop dead on the spot. And once again, Bear, another amazing piece of music, but I promise you, I'm never listening to this again. From scary to sad, we go to track 11, The Pyre, featuring Raya Yarbrough. Oh Bronwyn, you left us too soon. The track opens with ominous drums that are followed by that same vocal melody that, as I referenced on episode 41, Rya performed during the Siege in the Southlands track when Bronwyn is wounded and hit by arrows. To me, it sounds like the exact same lyrics and melody that we heard in that scene, or the one from the Infirmary track from episode 7. And I do also think we get the full trio of Rya's season 1 vocals, as around 1 minute 10, it seems to switch into the theme we heard on the In Defiance of Death track from episode 6. In other words, most of the track is basically a combination of all the sad music that was used for Bronwyn in season 1. So there's a cheerful thought, I guess. I mean, there is a moment of light in this song. At around the 1 minute 35 mark, it soars into the Bronwyn and Arondir love melody, which is a moment of light, but again, let's be honest, the Pyre is just a beautifully sad lament for the loss of Bronwyn and the loss of Arondir's love for her. Rest in peace, Bronwyn. I mean, when we see you dead. But you know, you're definitely dead. From lost love to perhaps new love, we go to track 12, Estrid. I mean, say it with me guys, it's rom-com time. Except, I guess we don't know how much comedy there's going to be in Isildur and Estrid's romance. Let's hope a little bit here and there, perhaps. Either way, the Hardanger fiddle at the start of the track immediately situates us in the sounds of the Southlands, before it progresses into a very different melody from 20 seconds. At the 1 minute 10 mark, there is a change again, and we almost hear what sounds like the opening couple of notes from Galadriel's theme, before again it pivots back to that original melody at 1 minute 40. Now I'm not sure what Galadriel's theme making a brief appearance there means. Could it be a clue to Estrid's heritage? If so, what does that mean? Does it mean she's one of the Edain? Is she descended from the Númenórean colonists? Who knows? It's a real mystery, but I think it does mean something that there's just a hint of Galadriel's theme there. Then, at 1 minute 52, there's the start of a beautiful string section that, to me, this is when the song really feels like a love song, which, you know, good news for Isildur, I guess. However, my musical comparison for this song, and I admit it is probably the worst one I've made yet, to me, it's oddly reminiscent of the string section from the song Reflection in the original animated Mulan film. Let me know if anyone else out there felt that, because it might just be me being odd, but that's what I got. Overall, I would describe Estrid's theme as quite a contemplative piece of music, and perhaps this speaks to some ambiguity both around her identity and, importantly, her intentions with Isildur. Track 13, The Great Eagle. Now, unlike the last track, there is absolutely no ambiguity in this one, as the Númenor theme opens the piece with great strength, almost pulling you back to that feeling you had in episode 3 when we were first introduced to Númenor. I could be wrong, but it sounds like Bear may have added more drums or increased their prominence in this track. Alternatively, and I think I've seen other people saying this, I could just be overcomplicating it, and what we're really hearing is not just the Númenor theme, but the emphatic Númenor section of the Sailing into Dawn track. However, the track takes a sharp turn at 1 minute 15 with the entrance of angelic chorals, which for me are obviously reminiscent of Valinor, before those climbing strings raise the tension, compounded by a swelling brass and percussion alongside it. That counter theme, which I presume represents the eagle, reaches a crescendo at 2 minutes 10, before the Númenor theme then fights back even stronger than ever, and we end on a note of dominance as Númenor overwhelms the Valinor theme. A fitting moment for a Chancellor to cement his position as the Ascendant King, if you want my guess anyway. Then we have track 14, The River Daughter, once again featuring Rya Yarborough. I mean, not too much to say about this short yet sweet track, except it is the perfect accompaniment to old Tom Bombadil, and what I really want is an extended duet between the two, where Rufus and Rya sing back and forth with each other. The soothing quality of the music in the background makes it sound like it might have been written for a goodbye scene for old Tom when he decides to leave Rhûn after giving the stranger renewed purpose and direction. Of course, That is just one theory. Alternatively, Tom could be staying in Rhûn a while longer, and instead this track could just be a credit song due to its short runtime. Either way, very lovely. 10 out of 10. Next up, track 15, Barrow-wights. Okay, if Shelob was a hard no from me, then this gets a yeah. Absolutely not. No thank you. Do not want this on my playlist. Nope. Just no. No thank you. The opening recitation of Cold Be Hand and Heart and Bone is just one of the most unsettling things I've ever listened to, and whilst there is a reprieve from the chanting from 40 seconds onwards, the fact that it's replaced with this mounting percussion and equally unsettling choral music just keep raising the tension to fever pitch. I then assume that the change in tenor from 1 minute 18 gets us into the advance of the Barrow-wights as they encircle and attack Galadriel and Elrond's company. The entrance of Elrond's theme at 1 minute 30 does offer a glimpse of light, but frankly, a glimpse is all it is, as we end on once again an absolutely hell no, go away finale of creepy whispering. Shelob and Barrow-wights, you are both hereby banished from any of my future Lord of the Rings playlists. Sorry, Bear. Track 16, Forgiveness Takes an Age. I'm not quite sure what I thought we'd get, but the opening to this one was really different to my expectations, just given the clues from the trailers that the name of this title references a scene involving the Ents. It just wasn't what I expected. I will say the gentle percussion to start it off is quite lovely, and the choral accompaniment almost seems closer to Valinor than to any other musical location we've had. But I would describe it as far more soothing than Valinor's otherworldly tone. Then, from the 1 minute mark, we get what I can only describe as the most beautiful climb of music I've heard in a long time. The way the strings almost seem to shake and quiver with emotion at 1 minute 11, it just makes me feel like the music is trying to get you to lose your composure and just bawl your eyes out, and frankly, I'm sure that this is exactly the effect the attached scene will have on me. However, I do think that the sudden change into the Bronwyn and Arondir theme at 1 minute 47 really does sell us on what the forgiveness in this title is all about. Arondir forgiving himself for Bronwyn's death. Who knows, maybe there's an element of Isildur and Estrid in there, but what a beautiful track. I almost am not really that fussed what this track is about, because it is just so gorgeous. And what a welcome relief after the Barrow-wights. Track 17, Candles on the Tide, featuring Clydene Jackson. This was a much more ominous opening than I expected for this track, and I have to say those first 15 seconds are deeply unsettling, although the choral section after 19 seconds sounds like the Valinor motif for me. We then seem to switch to a different tone after 30 seconds, with that same Valinor tune, but with the voices overpowering the music, into something much darker as the song progresses once more after 1 minute 14. The middle section of the song is honestly a bit of a mystery to my untrained ear, but after 2 minutes 24 we get a piece of vocal accompaniment that I don't think we've ever heard before, and I assume this is obviously Clydene Jackson. The lyrics here are probably still Quenya or Sindarin, but there's a kind of reverb on the voice in parts that makes it sound like it's echoing. Now, I don't think that means we're in an interior location, given the reference to the tide, but it's certainly noticeable the way the voice seems to ring back and forth. And interestingly, the voice towards the end, it almost has a similar strain to it, as in the Stone Singers track, like the vocalist here is in pain, or translating the emotional hurt into singing. Overall, whilst this one left me a bit puzzled, both the instrumentation and vocals in this track made it the one from Season 2 which most reminded me of Bear's God of War soundtrack. As always, for those of you who weren't around for Season 1, if you love Bear's music but haven't listened to this, go and listen to the original soundtrack for God of War. It is a true masterpiece. Following this was track 18, Army of Orcs. I'll be honest with you listeners, I actually had a little chuckle when this one started playing, and it's only because the sudden Nampat just transported me instantly back to listening to the Season 1 album for the first time. as we've already had previously confirmed by Bear, those war drums enter early, and their inclusion makes the Nampat chorus feel even more intense and larger in scale. Much like the Rhûn theme, it adds a definitively martial quality to the track, and appropriately so of course to match Adar's new army on the march. There are a couple of notable deviations in this track though, such as at 45 seconds when we hear that rapid repetition of strings that seem to lead into a small snippet of Círdan's theme. It's as if his looming presence is beginning to reach Adar's children. 2 minutes 37, however, is the most tension-filled rendition of Nampat yet. There's something in the instrumentation and the way the music builds. It just feels like it's adding a level of dread and intensity, like we, the audience, are meant to realise this is an army like we've not seen before in the show. Now, Galadriel's theme seems to repeatedly try to emerge throughout this track before it truly gains a foothold at 3 minutes 10, when it comes to the fore, as the two themes then are almost dueling for dominance. And at 3:37, Galadriel's core theme wins through, louder than ever, and it seems like a moment of triumph for her as it swells towards the close. But those final notes of the song, they take a dark twist that suggests that perhaps, based on what we've seen from the trailers, perhaps this is when she is defeated and captured. Anyone got a cage lying around that's just the right size for an elf? After this is track 19, the last ballad of Damrod, featuring Jens Kidman. I'm not going to waste any time repeating my reaction to this track. You can go back and listen, as I already covered it on episode 41. This was the first track released separately to the album, so we don't need to cover it again here, but suffice to say, once again, this is one for all of you metalheads out there, and I cannot wait to see Damrod's big feet stride onto screen with this playing in the background. And then we have track 20, Battle for Eregion. Well, here we go. It's the track that will probably define the season, and maybe even the show up until this point. I know I just released an episode on this siege, so go listen to that episode if you haven't already. But as for my analysis on this track, I'll be honest listeners, it is so overwhelming, and it sends my mind reeling in so many places that I don't have coherent thoughts. So instead, here's what I thought I'd do. I am simply going to read you my bullet point notes, and you decide if it makes any sense, or if I just lost my mind while listening. So this is unedited, this is literally just what I put in my notes. Another ominous military drum tattoo brings us into this song. 25 seconds, brand new vocals, followed by Adar's theme arising with dominance. 55 seconds, Nolwa Matar, mother truckers. 1 minute 44, Elrond's theme is resurgent, but just the major moments and tied with the drums. This is clearly his battle theme as it evolves. 2 minutes 1 seconds, more Nolwa Matar. 2 minutes 15 seconds. Onwards from here, it sounds like it might be Elrond's cavalry charge from the fast-paced strings, drums, and what almost sounds to me like clapping. 3 minutes, something much more fragile and delicate. I feel like I should recognise it. 3 minutes 11, another version of Nolwa Matar, or is this just an evolution of it? 3 minutes 43. Holy bleep, what is this? Has Bear made the Nolwa Matar turned up to 100 remix? New favourite section of music. 4 minutes 08. It turns into the sad Galadriel music from when she was drowning in episode 2 and episode 8. Oh dear. 4 minutes 28. It's turning to something more hopeful. Galadriel freed from her cage. 5 minutes. Triumphant Galadriel theme returns. Her and Elrond reunited and the might of the Noldor showing through once more. 5 minutes 30. Something sadder again. Almost mournful for the next minute. 6 minutes 30. The music starts to swell again, but still sad. Then a single female voice joins. Is this the Eregion theme returned? The children's choir perhaps, but with added extra voice alongside? 7 minutes 25. Really beautiful ending melody to this piece follows. I think we know what tragic scene this is. 7 minutes 50. Onwards is a bit of a mystery to me. 8 minutes 58. This feels like something brand new again with these building strings. Almost back into a chase music, like Nolwa Matar for the Chase of Adar in episode 6. 9 minutes 26. That's exactly what this is, but she's not chasing Adar now. I think we know who. 10 minutes 07. Dramatic horn and interclosing section. All is darkness. 10 minutes 26. Lamenting music again. 10 minutes 50. Another turn into something even more dramatic and horrifying. Hello, Sauron. And those are all my notes. Make of that what you will. I can't analyse this track, I really can't. I just know it's epic. I know there's so many different character themes in there. I can't wait to see the siege on screen. And I'm sure I made this clear, but if I didn't, Nolwa Matar is love, Nolwa Matar is life. Bless. After all that excitement, we go to track 21, Durin's Bane. Now this track is fascinating to me because I think it really divides into two halves. It opens with Durin's theme, but that theme immediately starts to build with pulsating strings. Then at 45 seconds, Elrond's theme arrives, and I assume this is when he comes to Khazad-dûm to ask Durin for his help in the fight for Eregion. But then the section after 1 minute 30, it's so filled with sadness, it makes me think that perhaps Durin refuses at first or says he can't. However, the arrival of horns at 1 minute 55 has a warlike quality that could be encouraging. And then from 2 minutes 10 we slide back into Durin's theme, until we get a very small snippet of Galadriel's theme at 2 minutes 30, which makes me think that in trying to convince him, this is when Elrond tells Durin that his friend has been captured and is in danger. We switch back to Elrond's theme once more after 3 minutes, before the re-emergence of the original Khazad-dûm theme comes in 30 seconds later, and we get the atmosphere rising. That intense string section makes me feel like Durin is finding renewed vigour for the fight. This is only reinforced at 4 minutes 29, as it seems to transform into something akin to a dwarven war chant, alongside that music. Perhaps this is the accompaniment for the dwarves readying themselves and marching to war. However, as I said at the start, this is a track of two halves, and of course the title refers to something quite different, with 5 minutes 18 bringing in a mix of frenetic strings and ominous dwarven choral singing. The build of the percussion from 6 minutes onwards, it seems to me like the escalation leading to a reveal of Durin's Bane in the caverns below Khazad-dûm itself. This build is followed then by the music fading away after 45 seconds of that intensity to be replaced by the string section, and at this point it almost sounds like music that would transport us through Khazad-dûm, rising through the aftermath of the destruction and debris caused by Durin's Bane. The final part is the most interesting to me though, because it's intriguing. There's something new in the music from 7 minutes 30, which I'm just going to madly theorycraft, is going to signify the old King Durin passing away, and Durin IV inheriting the throne, or perhaps it's something around the shutting of the doors of Durin following Eregion. In fact, for an even more wild theory, at 8 minutes 10 onwards, could that be coronation music? Is this Prince Durin becoming the king? Maybe not, but it's just a theory I wanted to put out there. Anyway, whatever the second half of this track is set to, it has me very intrigued as to what exactly our sleeping house cat of a Balrog is going to be doing this season. Onwards to one of my other favourite tracks from the album, track 22, Last Temptation. Now, as I said on Twitter, this is easily a top 3 track for me. It is the ultimate piece of music that uses these dueling themes to paint a picture in your mind, despite the fact we haven't even watched the scene yet. The opening choral singing from Where the Shadows Lie quickly transforms into something far more violent, with Sauron's theme resurgent before we head into, and this is, bear in mind, a direct quote from my notes, with some censorship, 1 minute 7, "What the fudge is this amazing new vocal section? Now this is what I call epic showdown music." From 1 minute 55, we get this push and pull between the two characters, as Sauron's theme is brought forth with those creepy vocals. But then there's a brief triumphant moment at 2 minutes 26 for Galadriel. However, this triumph is quickly interrupted at 2 minutes 32 by the original Halbrand Southlands theme. Perhaps the Great Deceiver reminding Galadriel of what he was to her before the Season 1 finale reveal. At 2 minutes 57, we get right back to what I call the unbelievably epic showdown music, but this time Galadriel's theme comes through in the background far more resounding, and then the Nolwa Matar motif fighting with Sauron's. We reach a sort of creepy standoff with music at around 3:49, as those chilling vocals from Sauron's theme re-emerge again. Then it's straight back to the dueling themes, Galadriel's standing proud and Sauron's coming right back against it, as the tension and maddening intensity rise until at 5 minutes 30 we reach our peak moment of Galadriel's theme rising to a crescendo. The ending of this track has Sauron's theme return, but this time it's more softly, and the way I describe it is, it's almost as if Sauron is retreating into the shadows, and after the 6-minute mark, the Galadriel theme returns alone. This time, the main melody is almost played on single strings, like it was done many moons ago in the conversation between Elrond and Galadriel among the memorials to fallen elves in episode 1. We close the track as the anxious string section builds once again, but amongst it, I think there is something more hopeful here in Galadriel's theme. Did she survive and pass the final test? Or should I say, did she resist Sauron's last temptation? Back to the Stranger once more, we have track 23, The Staff. My first thought when I heard this track, assuming that I'd immediately be hearing something familiar from the Stranger, was, oh, this is very different. To me, it almost sounds like the children's choir that we heard in the Eregion theme, and for a second I thought that's what it was. But instead, I think it signifies that we might either be moving away from or incorporating something new into the signature Wise One theme for the Stranger. It's still just as beautiful, but it's not quite as imposing. But hang on, wait a minute. At 1 minute 30, there comes that majesty and power again, reinforced by some angelic vocals and light strings. It's as if to remind us who the Stranger is there for, as at 2 minutes 15, the Harfoot theme re-emerges clearly, which for me was very reminiscent of the final scene for Nori and the Stranger in Season 1, as they set off on their journey to Rhûn. Perhaps a new journey awaits them now, either heading further into Rhûn in the east, or heading back west. To close out the track, we get the music that I always associate with scenes where the Stranger is looking for his constellation among the stars, before we get one final return to the full Wise One theme for the last 30 seconds. But again, to me, it sounds like the theme has changed. That opening part has melded with it. And so I wonder if this is a new combination that we'll hear going forward, with this new version of the Wise One theme, signifying perhaps that the Stranger has once again embraced a new part of his identity and his power. Either way, it's got me very excited for however the Season 2 ends for the Stranger. Track 24, Old Tom Bombadil Reprise, featuring Rory Kinnear and Daniel Wayman. Once again, fair play. Bombadil does it again with a really beautiful tune. However, I would say it's not what I expected. I thought the reprise would be a quite silly, jaunty tune, bringing all that whimsy. Instead, the instrumental version of Old Tom Bombadil in the first half of this song is actually quite melancholic to listen to. Again, I'll emphasise that it is incredibly charming, and admittedly more to my taste than the signature silly Tom Bomb. But is this what you Bombadil fans want? You'll have to let me know. I'll just close by saying that I think Daniel and Rory's voices meld really beautifully here, and I am very much looking forward to seeing them duet on screen together. And finally, track 25, The Sun Yet Shines. Here we are, we've reached our final track, and what a way to end this is. It opens with Galadriel's theme, as beautiful as ever, almost taking us back to where we started in the prologue to Season 1. But from 1 minute 6, this track feels like the show is saying to us, it's not over yet. The fight for Middle-earth is far from done. And what better track to take us into that fight than the legendary Nolwa Matar, but this time it enters with slightly subdued vocals in the background before it becomes resurgent and fights back to become more majestic than ever. To me, this may well be Galadriel renewing her vow to destroy Sauron and to unite all the other noble warriors of Middle-earth together. Then, we're straight back into that unbelievably epic showdown music from The Last Temptation, which leads us into a powerful rendition of Galadriel's theme that feels like it has renewed strength after all the trials and tribulations she's endured in Season 2. Is she off in search of Celeborn? Going to Lorien to found a kingdom of her own? Whatever she's doing, she means business. And so of course we get one more rendition of Nolwa Matar to remind us who's boss. Guys, I cannot stress this enough. We have never been more back than this. Don't worry about the darkness we're going to endure, because I'm more convinced than ever that Season 2 will end on a note of defiant strength as our heroes cling to their faith and their hope. The shadow will pass, and Bear is telling us here to hold on to that hope, no matter how meagre. Nolwa Matar, you have saved us. I always knew you would. Well. This episode ended up being a little longer than I intended, but we have indeed reached the end. I hope that despite my muddling of musical terms and general disposition towards just being excited, that you found something to enjoy in my reactions here. Once again, I would say if you're looking to find more astute analysis of the soundtrack and the individual compositions, then head on over to Twitter, where you'll find many more astute and musically attuned folks who will be able to guide you where I simply cannot. Now, we're only a few days away from the show airing, and I don't know how many more podcast episodes I'll release before then. Maybe just one, maybe two, who knows. But guys, we are so close now, and I cannot wait to have you along on this journey. If you're somehow new to the podcast, make sure you subscribe on whichever podcast platform you prefer so that you never miss an episode. And as my usual reminder, the Daily Rings of Power podcast is now on YouTube, so I'd greatly appreciate it if you could head on over there and hit subscribe. We've somehow got over 300 followers by now, so if maybe, I don't know, we could hit 500 by the time the season ends, I'd find that a fun little achievement. I don't know if it does anything, but it's fun. As always, I'd love to continue this conversation on Twitter or in the comments on YouTube. Please let me know which of the tracks were your favourites, or which little musical moments have given you your own theories about the story and scenes in the coming season. But for today, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for listening. We're only 3 days away from Season 2, but don't worry, we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Daily Rings of Power podcast. Namarie.